Thank you, Madam Clerk. Welcome, everybody. I will call the meeting to order. We'll start off with our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect to history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. Further give thanks to the Chippewa Saugeen, the Chippewa Nawash, now known as Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any add-ons to the agenda here today?
I'd like to add a comment on the agenda.
Okay, under new business. Okay. So noted. So a recommendation here that the agenda be approved as amended.
Mr. Mayor, if I can,
Please.
I believe you wanted to add a discussion regarding meeting commencement times.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I guess I should follow the protocol. Yes, I do. So that's added to Madam Clerk. Okay. So the recommendation is that the agenda be approved as amended. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Peter, second by Barry. Show of hands, all in favor. Madam Clerk, do we need a mover and a seconder all the time? Yeah, okay. All right. Declaration of pecuniary interest. You can clear anytime you see fit during the meeting. Minutes of the previous minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the Police Service Board meeting held on February 8th, 2022 be adopted. Someone's moved to put on the floor, please. Moved by Barry, second by Peter. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor. The motion is carried. We no delegations here today. Public question period. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody from the, no? We have no one, okay, from the public? Correspondence. We have one piece of correspondence. It was passed down from council to this Police Service Board. The Ministry of Transportation, administrative referendum penalties for vehicle-based infractions. And it was passed down, Commander Anderson, maybe from comment from you about this piece of correspondence. We in Georgian Bluffs, we have, I think, 2-3 traffic lights only. I don't know if it affects us. It's more of a GTA sort of area than Georgian Bluffs. Comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No comments there. I don't believe it's going to have a big effect to this area.
Member Hatt, go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment. I kind of checked into this, and anyhow, the cameras is going to be a cost to the municipality, and you have to put a sign up 90 days prior to do the infraction of the cameras of the speed limit. And there's 2 different ways. You can have a stationary camera or one that moves around. And there is a company out of Toronto that will look after these cameras, and they take a percentage of the cost. But I've kind of recommended that maybe when the new Police Services Board comes into effect, that maybe that board looks at it instead of us.
Madam Clerk, we really can't comment on a new Police Service Board action. So would we just accept this as information now with the idea of forming it later? Or?
Yeah, I would suggest it's simply for the board's information today. You'll note that this piece of correspondence is asking for feedback or comments of any municipality. So it's not so much to install the cameras per se, but to provide feedback to the ministry.
So am I understanding from the committee here today that it doesn't really impact Georgian Bluffs at this present time?
I would suggest the only way it would impact Georgian Bluffs is if the board has any comments to lend to this consultation process.
Okay. I'll start off with Deborah. Commander Anderson, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know that we have the traffic volume here that would, like, it depends on what the fees will be. So it's hard to sort of judge whether it'd be worth looking into or not. I just don't know that we have the traffic volume here.
So you'd be okay with you then if we just accept it as information?
Absolutely.
Okay. Member Hughes, comment? Hit the button, please.
I agree. For information only at this point, it would be a very costly venture to get set up in this, and you see it in areas like the larger cities like Toronto, Hamilton, with monitoring people running red lights and things like that. Would be certainly a lot of costs in setting those up, and as you just said, the amount of traffic situations we have at this time, it's probably not that feasible.
Okay, thank you. Member Hatt, comment?
Yeah, I think we should just kind of table it for now as information, because we don't have many stoplights in the municipality. And I think we have any school zones, maybe one. And that's the only one that'd be effective in. And the cost to put these cameras in, is it worth it to get the revenue back?
So I think, Madam Clerk, the general consensus of the board is to accept it as information only.
And I would suggest that following this consultation period, I don't believe this is the last that we'll hear from the ministry, simply just an invitation to comment should we need to. So I would suggest receipt for information is most appropriate.
Thank you. Since this was sent to council to the police service board, it'll be noted in the minutes so council can see what happened, okay? All right, moving on for our agenda, we're down to reports and recommendations. The first one we have is the commander's report. I'll read the motion first. That's a detachment commander's report covering January 1, 2022 to February 28th, 2022. We received for information. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Peter, second by Barry. Deborah, and I don't know why I call you Deborah. Sorry. Commander Anderson, please go ahead.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report covers January 1st to February 28th, but I just want to point you in the direction of page 2 of the report at the top there. Because your police service board meetings are early in the month, it is difficult to get all that information, but it will be captured in the next report for you. Just want to bring that to your attention. So page 4 of the report, as you can see, the calls for service were up in 2021 by just over 1,000 calls for service. I can't really put my finger on what that's attributed to. It may be due to the pandemic and you know, the traffic during the summer and the tourism during the summer, but it is, your calls for service are up. But across the board in Grey County, the calls for service are up. Page 3 of the report, it notes COVID-related calls for service, false alarms, and 911 hangups. COVID-related calls for service, I'm hoping that that is going to be 0 pretty soon, but for now, we're still a few in 2022. False alarms, still have quite a few false alarms, although they are down significantly from the calls for service in 2018 and 2019. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention because these are billable calls for service. And 911 hangups down significantly from 2018 and 2019. Next is violent crime, which includes homicides, sexual assaults, robbery, and assaults. You can see from the comparison from 2015 onward, no significant jumps in those calls for service that are noteworthy. And in fact, you can see that not only in Grey Bruce but also in Georgian Bluffs, that those calls for service, violent crime, are trending downward. Page 4 of the report. Property crime in Georgian Bluffs is the first chart, and that includes fraud investigations, break-and-enters, auto theft, theft and mischief. There seemed to be in 2021 a significant jump in thefts. That may be due to, we have had sort of a trend with trailer thefts in our area. However, it was in different townships, not just Georgian Bluffs. However, we did make 2 significant arrests with respect to the trailer thefts. And although it's difficult to recover them because a lot of times they alter the VIN numbers on the trailers, what I would suggest, if anybody asks, that the tracking devices are coming down quite a bit in price, and any trailer owner might want to consider putting a tracking device on their trailer in the event that it does get taken. Page 5 of the report deals with drug investigations. They're down slightly in 2021. I know that our street crime unit, and I'll comment on that later on in the report, our street crime unit has been doing fantastic work in getting some of these illicit drugs off the street, as well as weapons, and recovering cash and property. I'll speak to that a little later, but they are trending slightly downward in Georgian Bluffs. Other investigations, domestic disputes, down slightly in 2021, as well as missing persons. That's a good trend. It's hard to address domestic disputes because it is, it's hard to deal with what goes on behind closed doors, but it's a good thing that people do report them so that we can take action on those. And in both the Grey Bruce area as a whole, as compared to Georgian Bluffs, both are trending downward in those 2 areas. Page 6 of the report. This is our crime report from our Detective Sergeant Byron Schwass, and this report is for all of Grey Bruce. Just wanted to point out that our major crime unit has managed 49 benchmark occurrences, the more serious occurrences that happen. They included 24 sudden deaths, 8 sexual assaults, 5 criminal harassment investigations, a large fraud complaint, and 2 cases of voyeurism under 18 years. They also assist our frontline officers in getting with their investigations and getting statements and providing guidance for more complex investigations. And the crime unit, who also investigate all sudden deaths, confirmed that through toxicology that one of the sudden deaths that we had was an opiate overdose, and that results in further investigation. We do try to track it back to the supplier and possibly lay charges when we can. You can see that our major crime unit is still following up on leads and preparing for court, and on several ongoing homicides, 4 that are listed there. And they continue to monitor our Ontario sex offenders, hate crime, extremism investigations, and they monitor high risk to reoffend offenders, and they monitor domestic violence offenses as well. Page 7 of the report is from our community street crime unit. Currently, we have Sergeant Jeff Dudley, who's filling in for Sergeant Jamie Blair, who's normally our street crime sergeant. He's been on an assignment currently, and Jeff's filling in for him. And Jeff comes from our intelligence bureau and did do time as a constable in the street crime unit, so he's well versed in their operation. I just wanted to bring your attention that we had a firearms and stolen property investigation that concluded, and this included West Region True Unit and West Unit ERT. Several different community street crime units came into our area to help. They did a high-risk warrant in a large rural property, and they recovered 2 firearms along with numerous firearms parts and ammunition, a large quantity of drugs that included fentanyl, methamphetamine, prescription pills, as well as a stolen 2018 UTV. The total value of the seized property is just under $20,000, and the total value of the seized drugs was just under $6,000. This will have a great community impact for the Grey Bruce area. They also assisted in tracking down and locating a male party that was wanted on several domestic related charges and who was also entrenched in the drug subculture. And he was successfully located and arrested by our street crime unit. During the last couple of months, our street crime unit, who is normally plainclothes, did don their uniforms for a little bit to help out with the freedom convoys and protests. They went to Windsor as well as Ottawa. Additionally, some of them stayed behind, put on their uniform, and took frontline calls for service to supplement the front line while all this was going on. Just to keep our commitment up for the number of officers out on the road. The Community Street Crime Unit also recovered 3 stolen vehicles valued at about $150,000 through a warrant, as well as a small quantity of drugs, ammunition, and stolen property. They have 1 person charged as a result of that for offenses relating to possession of stolen property over $5,000. The street crime unit also helped with a successful ride enforcement that was conducted by our frontline officers, where a loaded prohibited assault rifle was seized. The street crime unit assisted with the search warrant of that vehicle, and the driver of that vehicle was previously charged with fentanyl trafficking, a small amount of fentanyl, cannabis, and other various weapons, dangerous, and just under $1,000 were recovered in addition to the firearm, and that person's been charged. As a result of a drug overdose death, the street crime unit does a parallel investigation with their crime unit, just so that we can try to trace back the supplier of the drugs to the person that's overdosed. And because of that, they executed a search warrant on a suspected fentanyl dealer's residence, and they recovered cocaine, methamphetamine, trace fentanyl, packaging material, digital scales, drug paraphernalia worth approximately just under $1,700, and there's 2 males facing charges in relation to that. On page 9 of the report goes over our e-ticketing, breaks down the number of warnings and charges in the Grey Bruce for January and February, as well as Georgian Bluffs, and it also lists the top 10 charges, traffic-related charges in both areas. On page 10 just gives you an idea of where we're doing the traffic enforcement. Generally speaking, it's not just 10 and 6 highway. We do traffic control in the side roads as well. Page 11, 12, and part of 13 is your motor vehicle collisions for that time period. And just going through the primary cause of those accidents, or collisions rather. it can be attributed to driver error, as well as, domestic or wild animals, usually deer. But nothing that jumps to light with respect to any, engineering deficiencies in intersections or that sort of thing that the township might be concerned about. Page 14 of the report just covers off your traffic complaints, noise complaints, and animal complaints. Nothing of note there. And then we take a look at your bylaw calls for service, as well as ride, for just under 47 hours of ride during January, February, and 6.5 hours of foot patrol. On page 15 of the report, just goes over our media officer, Nick Wilson, and some of the highlights of the media releases that he's completed. As well, on page 17 and 18, it just goes over Nick's community service roles and how it breaks down where he's spending his time as a community service officer as well. Our court bureau supervisor is Jim Hunter, and he reports 145 criminal record checks and 31 vulnerable sector checks. And I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that I had notified each chair of each board that we report to that we were changing to being able to submit your criminal record checks online to us. That's going very well, and we're hoping that by June that will be completely centralized with respect to criminal record checks, where it's done all online. The only time that somebody would have to come into one of our detachments is to, if they have a hit on a vulnerable sector check and have to come in for fingerprints, elimination fingerprints essentially. That would be the only time. So we're hoping that's going to be starting up in June. We have a turnaround time of about 4 to 5 weeks currently. Once it goes centralized, it should be 48 hours to get the reports back. So that should be good news. Anybody applying for a job or needs their fingerprints for volunteering, that sort of thing. It should be fully up and running this fall. Our part-time unit serving summons and subpoenas, and they complete our civilian fingerprints as well as our criminal fingerprints. Our auxiliary unit, as you can see that we have 17 authorized positions. We only have 9 members right now due to some retirements, and the hiring or application process has been stalled because of COVID. We haven't received word when that will be starting up again, but we're hoping to get those up full. Also, our auxiliary unit, we're trained in operating a speed spy for us. They look after setting it up, and after a week they go back, bring it down, download the data, and send that to us to determine whether or not we need a focus patrol or some enforcement in that particular area. So they look after that, so we don't have to take somebody off the front line to do that. And as you can see, they do contribute quite a few hours with us, and we're hoping that continues on through the summer as well. Some noteworthy events in Grey Bruce. I mentioned that the street crime unit assisted with operations in Windsor and Lambton as well as Ottawa. The other officers in our detachment assisted with that as well. And their positions, we didn't run short. Those positions were backfilled with overtime, although the municipalities do not get charged back for that. It's just at regular hours. Just want to bring to your attention as well, PC Hesseltine, while he was en route to his Ottawa deployment, he stopped and assisted a Central Frontenac OPP officer trying to apprehend a male that he was struggling with, and he, without hesitation, stopped and assisted that officer to effect the arrest. And PC McKenzie, He did a great job, showed patience, respectfulness, compassion, and honesty when he interacted with an agitated male that was barricaded in his apartment for 2.5 hours. That person was successfully apprehended, and nobody was hurt, and there was no property damage to that. And Mr. Chair, that would be my report, and I'd be happy to take questions if you have any.
Thank you, Deborah. Great report. Does the board
Thank
have
you.
any questions of our command? Go ahead, Mr. Hughes.
Hi, Deborah. Commander Anderson, I should say.
That's fine.
I'm just curious, what is the cost of the criminal reference checks currently? I know, and there was something in the news recently about some costs being picked up. I don't know. I didn't catch whether it was all like volunteers or how that's handled. I'm just interested in that.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. If it's for a volunteer position, there's no charge to the applicant. And I'll have to tell you, I'm a bit behind in what we charge for the actual criminal record checks. I believe, and that might be dating myself here, but it was around $25 per criminal record check. But I think it has gone up since then.
Thank you.
I don't know that there's supposed to be a change in the cost to have them done when it goes centralized, but that information will be put out in the media, and instructions will be online for that.
Thank you, Deborah, for that. Member Hack, go ahead.
Yes, a couple questions, Commander. Are we short-staffed in our policing?
Actually, no, we're not. I can say that in the previous couple of years, we did have a few vacancies, but we are fully staffed right now.
Okay, why I asked that question is a person was telling me on a domestic, sometimes they might have to wait 20, 30, 40 minutes before another officer can go with them because of is it travel time or response or what? Like they were just concerned about that.
Well, I'd have to. I don't like to talk about non-specific occurrences. If there's a particular occurrence where that happened, I'd be happy to take a look at that particular incident. But generally speaking, domestics are a priority one call, and officers do their best to get there as soon as possible. It's up to the officer that arrives first on scene, depending on what's going on, whether they make the decision to attend alone. I would expect that if somebody's being injured, that officer, the first officer on the scene, would act. But generally speaking, if there's nothing actively going on, they may wait for backup in that case. But if there is a concern about a particular occurrence where that happened, if you can get me the details on that, I'd be happy to check into that for you and report back.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it. Again, thank you, Deborah, very much for the great report. One question on OPP's side of the fence. Any word on the new police service board, I think, on your side?
I have not heard anything on when they expect to have that start up. A guess would be that perhaps after the fall election.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm just curious. Okay, if there's no other questions of the commander on our report, all in favor of the report? The motion is carried. Moving on for agenda, we know unfinished business. We're down to new business. And Member you had an item you wanted to discuss.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering, are we a committee or a board?
You are a local municipal service board.
A board. So why I asked that question, I've done a little check around, and that anybody that goes to a conference, they are getting their accommodations paid for, and I guess we are not. And I wonder if there should be, why that is. You know, it's, we go to a conference and, it's an educational conference and we seem to learn a few things that goes on there. And, I'm just wondering why, now why, they can pay for our rooms. Like, we're going to go anyways. But, we're just wondering why.
Thank you, Member Hatt. Council as a whole set a policy in place for local boards in Taunton for enumeration of what they'd be giving. And in our particular case, the council passed a motion to provide $500 towards each member going to a particular conference. And it's not really a police service board discussion. It would have to go to council as a whole. Council's the one to put the policy in place, not the board. If you have every right to take it to council if you wish, but it will be discussed in open session, and you have every right to do that.
Yeah, I just feel that, you know, it's an educational thing. Before, when we went to conferences, and we have been to a conference for 2 years, and our accommodations were paid for, and I just thought that we seemed to hear about it after the fact, and maybe at the time that motion was passed at council, maybe we could have some input in. I don't know what you think, Peter, but that's my feeling.
Peter, go ahead.
I think Barry's trying to say is it, and I've only been on this board for, this is my start of my 4th year, I believe, but it's since I started with it, it's been amended, and that's his point, that other surrounding municipalities he's checked with is they're treated differently, and he recognizes, as do I, an inequity, I guess is the term. So.
Your comments are so noted. Madam Clerk, could you make a comment on how council put this policy in place for the Police Service Board?
Sure. So I guess in general sense, the Municipal Act requires that each municipality have a council remuneration policy. Over the course of the past few years, the council of this township has introduced more opportunity for public feedback within the council realm, being an introduction of an increased volume of committees. Therefore, with more appointments from the public to each varying committees, expenses for conferences were adding up and adding up and adding up. Therefore, this council has implemented this policy to ensure that everyone on any committee can attend any educational event while ensuring that the tax base does not incur that burden. So the mayor is correct. The remuneration policy was amended to include a $500 cap applicable to all council committees and boards effective last year, being 2021. As I said, this is a council policy. Should the board wish to request council amend that spending limit, you may do so by motion. Further, the second line in that remuneration policy does say you may move beyond the $500 allocation. However, it is subject to council approval. So should this board wish to make that recommendation to council, you may do so, but it will require a formal motion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that's what I was trying to say, Member Hatt, that it has to be taken to council as a whole to make any changes or anything you want. So it's entirely your right as 2 members, if you wish to put a motion on the floor to take it to council, it's your right.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that the council relook at this policy and that they pay for accommodations. That's all I'm asking.
Madam Clerk, what would be a better way to put that word back to council to, yeah.
Thank you. So Member Hat, please tell me if this proposed motion encapsulates your discussion that the conference fees for Police Services Board members to attend the 2022 OAPSB conference be approved beyond the $500 spending allocation, and that council revisit said allocation as it applies to the Township Police Services Board.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, so you move that motion,
I
Barry?
move that motion.
Peter, will you second that motion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's moved and seconded. Show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. And Madam Clerk, when this goes to our council, I guess I'll speak to that motion with your help.
Yes, that would be my recommendation. The minutes will form part of the agenda, so they'll have that as backup as well.
Just it's sort of a board issue that we're bringing forward, and then the staff shouldn't really be speaking to it. It should be us that are speaking to it. The council is what I'm trying to say. Okay. And Madam Clerk, this motion was only for this 2022 conference.
That is correct. So the way that the remuneration policy reads is it's basically a one-time request to move beyond the $500. The second line of the motion asks that they revisit the $500 allocation as it applies to this board.
Okay. And another question from the chair on that particular item. The concern was not having hotel rooms paid for at the conference because I believe, Carly, it was $400 some for registration, which is part of that $700 or that $500. So it leaves about a $70 amount left only for hotel rooms and so on. Is each member that attends this conference, they're still paid their remuneration for the day and meals? Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct. You still are paid for your time spent at the conference as well as mileage to get to the conference and your meals.
So that's over and above is what I'm coming at, just so everybody's clear.
What the mileage? How much is the mileage per kilometer?
Depending on the county or Great County rate, but turn your mic off there.
Sorry?
Turn your mic off.
Oh,
Sorry. Off the top of my head, I believe it's 52 cents, I believe is what our mileage is at right now. I'd have to confirm that though.
It goes on a rotating basis on the county level. The county actually sets a rate and we follow it. Okay. Anyways, I just want to make that very clear to the members that regardless what happens with this particular thing, that you're still paid for your time there, your meals, and your mileage is over and above the $500. Am I correct in saying that? Just so we understand. Okay. Okay. And this doesn't apply to you, Commander.
No worries.
Okay, so I have an item on that I would like to add under new business, and it's concerning our times of our meetings. I'm talking about the time of the day. We most generally set a time for the remaining part of our term. We chose to meet monthly, which we do, and I still think it's a good idea we do. But I was wondering if would the board be receptive to move the time to the morning of that Tuesday instead of 3:30 in the afternoon? It would. I just wondered if we had enough will to do that. It would certainly help with scheduling, even on our staff and myself included. I don't know if that affects you, Commander, or not. I'm thinking about.
I'm happy to attend at any time, Chair, that you set.
So I was thinking about, I'll turn back to our staff. Is 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock a sensible time? It just would be so much easier if we could change that time from the rest of our term. 9 o'clock? Peter? Or,
I do have a commitment. I'm chair of the Men's Overseas, and we meet every Tuesday, and it runs from 10 to till noon hour. But I can try to get somebody to fill in because it's only once a month anyways. So I'll try to get somebody to fill in my position, and we can try to go with that.
So Madam Clerk will suggest that the time change to 9 o'clock on that Tuesday. And do you need a motion for that? So could I have a motion from the floor to change that time? It's moved by Peter, second by Barry, that the board change their meeting time to 9 o'clock on the Tuesday. I say Tuesday because it's always Tuesday. So a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Commander Anderson, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just would request that if notification could go to my admin clerk, Riley McDouling, so that she can make those adjustments to the schedule. That would be great.
Yep, Brittany's nodding her head. Consider it done.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to our agenda. We have no other new business here today. Seeing none. Our next meeting is June the 7th at 9 o'clock. So we know the business here today. I'll ask for adjournment of the meeting. Moved by Peter, second by Barry. Show of hands, all in favor of adjournment. We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Commander.